I've just decided to fit this video in, just bring you an update on the Karen Reid trial. When I say an update, we're actually going to recap from day 1 to day 25, because as we know, not everyone has caught up with what's been going on over there in Canton, Boston, Massachusetts, with this particular trial and what has happened over the past 25 days, I think it is. Yes, we're now up to day 25 in the trial of Karen Reid, the trial that's spreading right across the world. And a big shout out to those returning subscribers, also the new ones. Welcome, welcome. My name is Hartley. If this is the first time you're joining us, thank you very much. Don't forget to smash that like button below this video. Also share it with your friends and family. As I said, tonight we're going to give you some of the highlights for the past 25 days. This should make your mind absolutely clear what this case is all about, and hopefully you'll be able to comment and say what you think. Drop those comments below, share it with me, and we can come to a conclusion. Okay, we're going to open with some of the statements from the prosecution and also from the defense. So hold tight. Once again, don't forget to smash that like button and hit the subscribe button.
2282 CR 117001, Karen Reid of Mansfield in the county of Bristol, on or about January 29, 2022 at Canton in the county of Norfolk, did assault and beat John O'Keefe with intent to murder such person, and by such assault and battery did kill and murder the said John O'Keefe, and is guilty of murder in the second degree and not in the first degree, in violation of General Law, Chapter 265, Section 1. 002, Karen Reid of Mansfield, county of Bristol, on or about January 29, 2022 at Canton in the county of Norfolk, did operate a motor vehicle upon a way as defined in Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 90, Section 1, or in a place to which the public has a right of access, or upon a way or in a place to which members of the public have access as invitees or licensees, with a percentage by weight of alcohol in their blood of 8/100ths or greater, or while under the influence of intoxicating liquor, and did so operate said motor vehicles that the lives and safety of the public might be endangered, and by such wanton and reckless conduct so described, did cause the death of another person, to wit, John O'Keefe, in violation of General Law, Chapter 265, Section 13.5. 003, Karen Reid of Mansfield in the county of Bristol, on or about January 29, 2022 at Canton in the county of Norfolk, did operate a motor vehicle upon a way or in a place to which the public has a right of access, or upon a way or in a place to which members of the public have access as invitees or licensees, and without stopping and making known her name, residence, and registration number of her motor vehicle, did go away to avoid prosecution or evade apprehension after knowingly colliding with or otherwise causing injury to John O'Keefe, such injuries having resulted in the death of said person in violation of General Law, Chapter 90, Section 24(2)(a)(2). 2.
There you have it. Those are the charges. Now here's the prosecution. Mr. Yannetti defending Karen Reid.
Karen Reid was framed. Her car never struck John O'Keefe. She did not cause his death, and that means that somebody else did. You will learn that it was no accident that John O'Keefe was found dead on the front lawn of 34 Fairview Road in Canton on January 29th of 2022. You will learn that at that address lived a well-known and well-connected law enforcement family in Canton, the Alberts. Because the Alberts were involved, and because they had close connections to the investigators in this case, Karen Reid was framed for a murder she did not commit. Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. As I previously told you, my name is David Yannetti. I'm an attorney with an office in Boston. Together with attorneys Alan Jackson and Elizabeth Little, It is truly my privilege and my honor to represent Karen Reed during this trial. From a very early juncture in this case, you will question the Commonwealth's theory of the case. You will question the quality of the Commonwealth's evidence. You will question the veracity of the Commonwealth's witnesses. And you will question their shoddy and biased investigation, a faulty investigation that led to Karen Reed sitting here today. You will learn, in short, that the police did no real investigation of this case, and you will question why. You will question why the investigators had such tunnel vision. You will question why they focused solely on Karen Reed, someone with no ties to the Canton Police Department, as opposed to the well-known and well-connected Albert family of Canton, a family that was never treated as suspects by the investigators in this case. Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found mortally injured on Brian Albert's front lawn. His body was in full view and almost right below Brian Albert's bedroom window on his front lawn. He was found wearing only one sneaker. You'll learn that Brian Albert was a Boston police officer as well, and that he was a trained first responder. Brian Albert was notified that another police officer was injured and unresponsive on his front lawn, and Brian Albert did nothing. His sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, and other civilians were on his property that morning after John O'Keefe's body was found. Police, EMTs, firefighters, police cruisers, an ambulance, fire truck, lights flashing, and first responder Brian Albert never came out of his house. Equally important for you will be the fact that the lead homicide investigators never went inside the Albert home that morning. You'll learn that Brian Albert's brother, Kevin Albert, is a Canton police officer. It was obvious very early on that the Canton police should not be investigating the death of a man found on the property of the brother of a Canton police officer. So it was decided just about from the start that the Massachusetts State Police should take complete control of this investigation because the Canton police were conflicted out. Now, that sounded good at the time, but you'll learn that two major problems arose. First, despite the fact that they obviously had a conflict of interest, the evidence will show that the Canton police still had their hands in this investigation. You will find it astounding. But Canton police officer Kevin Albert, the reason for the conflict of interest in the first place, was continually updated about the status of this investigation while it was going on. Second, and equally troubling, is that the lead state police detective who was assigned to this case was a man named Michael Proctor. Michael Proctor, you will learn, is one of the many people in Canton with deep ties to the Albert family. Michael Proctor's own mother refers to the Alberts as the Proctor's second family. His own sister's wedding, Michael Proctor was in the wedding party with Colin Albert. And he sat at the head table of that wedding with members of the Albert family. That's the man who was chosen to lead the investigation into the suspicious death on the property of Brian Albert. That's the man who gave updates to Canton police officer Kevin Albert while the state police were supposed to be investigating what had occurred at his brother Brian Albert's house. You'll learn that right from the jump, Michael Proctor predetermined the outcome of this case. Never stepped foot inside the Albert home on January 29th, 2022. Never checked out whether there were any signs of struggle inside that home. He never called for crime scene technicians and other specialists to look for blood or other trace evidence within the home. He never asked Brian Albert for permission to go in the home and take a look around. Michael Proctor never applied for a search warrant to go in that home. Instead, he focused immediately and exclusively on Karen Reed, the outsider. You will learn that no one in the Proctor family has ever called the Reed family their second family. No one in the Proctor family had been in a wedding party with anyone from the Reed family. Karen Reed was a convenient outsider. She was most definitely not from Canton. So how did Michael Proctor feel about her? How did he treat somebody he was investigating at a point in time when he should have been keeping an open mind and focusing on obtaining all possible evidence so that he didn't miss anything? Well, you will learn that on the very day that John O'Keefe was found dead on Brian Albert's lawn, Michael Proctor was texting with his high school buddies about this supposedly secret investigation, using his personal cell phone. He was revealing information about this investigation to his friends, assuming that nobody would ever find out what he was doing and what he was saying. And he was revealing his true thoughts about Karen Reed to his friends, not what he put in his sanitized police reports, his true feelings. To his friends whom he trusted, and in text messages that he never thought would come into the hands of the defense in this case. Lead investigator Trooper Michael Proctor, right from the start, called Karen Reed names you would reserve only for your worst enemies. He told his friends that he hoped that she would kill herself. He told his friends that he had seized her cell phone. And you will learn that he knew he shouldn't have been accessing any content on her cell phone because he knew there would likely be attorney-client communications on between Karen and me at that time. He knew that he was supposed to wait for a search warrant or other permission from a judge in order to go through that phone. But you'll learn that he went through the phone anyway, without permission. And you'll know that he did because he told his high school buddies that he was searching her phone for nude photos of Karen Reed. And he was disappointed he hadn't found any yet. That is the professional and unbiased investigator who was chosen to lead the investigation into the death of John O'Keefe. You will learn that one of Michael Proctor's high school friends commented to him that with a dead body on the front lawn, the homeowner in this case is surely going to catch a lot of grief. And do you know what Michael Proctor's response to that was? One word. Nope. And he explained why. Michael Proctor assured his buddies that the homeowner would not catch a lot of grief because, quote, the homeowner's a Boston cop too, end quote. That one sentence, ladies and gentlemen, in Michael Proctor's own words, will explain a lot to you about how this investigation was conducted. You will be able to evaluate whether Trooper Michael Proctor treated Brian Albert and his family differently because of who they are and the relationships between his family and theirs. You will evaluate whether this investigation was on the up and up. You will decide, as a result, how valuable or worthless the prosecution's DNA evidence is or is not, in light of who controlled that evidence. You will learn that Michael Proctor's fingerprints are figuratively all over this case. His fingerprints are all over the Commonwealth's evidence. You will learn that Michael Proctor showed up at Karen Reed's parents' house in Dighton to interview her during the afternoon of January 29th, only hours after John O'Keefe's body was found dead on Brian Albert's front lawn. You'll learn that Michael Proctor had her Lexus SUV towed from her parents' home. But you'll also learn that he wrote a search warrant in which he falsified the time that he took that SUV. He swore under oath that the vehicle wasn't towed until 5:30 p.m. But you'll learn that we obtained surveillance footage that he didn't know we would get. And that surveillance footage exposed that Michael Proctor's words in that sworn affidavit were a lie. Michael Proctor had that vehicle for about 90 minutes before he claimed to have taken it. And folks, you will learn that the timing is important, very important. Because when John O'Keefe was first found on Brian Albert's front lawn, the police thoroughly searched that yard for potential evidence. And it wasn't just one officer, or two, or three. There were at least 4 officers that searched that front lawn. And that morning was the beginning of a snowstorm, but there wasn't yet much snow on the ground when they were searching that lawn. It was light out by the time they did the search, and it was getting lighter. And during that thorough search of Brian Albert's front lawn, the number of pieces of taillight that were found by a minimum of 4 officers looking for evidence was 0. It was only later in the day, when the snow was really starting to accumulate, that the police miraculously started to find pieces of taillight on the property. The police only started to find pieces of taillight after Michael Proctor had seized Karen Reed's car. They only started to find pieces of taillight after Michael Proctor had possession of her taillight. You'll learn that Trooper Michael Proctor then kept going back to the Albert residence after that day, and he claims to have kept finding pieces of taillight on multiple occasions on multiple different days. And in addition, a good week after John O'Keefe's death, Canton Police Chief Kenneth Berkowitz, an older officer on the brink of retirement with probably not the best eyesight, he supposedly was driving, happened to be driving past Brian Albert's house. And by the way, Brian Albert is someone with whom Chief Berkowitz is also good friends. And this older man allegedly spotted yet another piece of taillight from his moving vehicle. This was yet another piece of taillight that was somehow missed by the trained specialists who had previously and thoroughly searched the property. Another piece of taillight that Proctor supposedly missed in the many times he went back to the property. Michael Proctor claims that he kept finding pieces of taillight right up until February 18th of 2022, which was nearly 3 weeks after John O'Keefe was found dead on Brian Albert's lawn. You will learn that there is no competent evidence that Karen Reed's taillight shattered at Brian Albert's property in the early morning hours of January 29th of 2022. To the contrary, you'll learn that when Karen left John at Brian Albert's house, she drove back to John's house on Meadows Ave across town in Canton. At John's home, where he lived with his 2 adopted children, Karen was drifting in and out of sleep, but she woke up for good in a panic sometime around 4 a.m. because John hadn't come home. And that was not like him at all. He had never done that before. Karen had a sinking feeling that something was wrong. Something was seriously wrong. So she got back into her Lexus, and she backed up out of the garage to leave the driveway, and when she did, the right rear taillight of her Lexus struck John's parked vehicle in the driveway, and her taillight cracked. That was the same taillight that the prosecution now claims was broken outside the Albert residence hours earlier at 12:30 a.m. But we have video evidence that the taillight was actually broken at 5 a.m., many hours after the prosecution needs that taillight to have been broken. There is, of course, no video of the taillight being broken at Brian Albert's house. You will eventually conclude that that's because the taillight was not broken there. Importantly, you will learn that there was an eyewitness who arrived at 34 Fairview after Karen got there. with John O'Keefe in the early morning hours of January 29th. And that eyewitness, Brian Nagel, who's the brother of Julie Nagel, who was at the after-hours party that night, he had a clear view of Karen's SUV. Brian Nagel confirms that there was no damage to her taillight at that time. Karen was sitting in the driver's seat with her hands at 10 and 2. And Ryan Nagel confirms that while Karen was inside the car, John O'Keefe was not. John O'Keefe was also not outside the car at that time. You will ultimately conclude there's only one other place he could have been. Now, going back to that 5 a.m. video from John's driveway, you will see Karen back up her Lexus and strike John's car at about 5 a.m. when she was leaving John's house to go out to look for him. And you will know that she struck his car at 5 a.m. because you will watch that video closely. You will witness that the wheels and the hubcaps on John's car are jostled and moved by Karen's SUV. And you will conclude that that video depicts exactly when Karen's taillight was cracked, long after she dropped off John at night at 34 Fairview. And you will learn that part of the reason that Karen's Lexus hit John's car was that Karen was panicked at that time. Where is John? Why didn't he come home? What happened to him? And you will learn that she was racking her brain for what possibly could have happened. And like many of us, was worried about the worst. Did I hit him? Could I have hit him? That was what she was saying, both to herself and to other people later that morning when she went back to 34 Fairview. She couldn't think of anything else that made sense. She certainly didn't consider in a million years that someone from within the Albert home could have beaten up John and left him to die on the front lawn. Now, that was over 2 years ago. Karen didn't know then what you will learn during this trial. Karen didn't know that Brian Albert's sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, left the after-hours party at Brian Albert's house sometime after Karen pulled away. She didn't know that after Jennifer McCabe dropped off some people elsewhere, she returned to her own home. Karen didn't know that Jennifer McCabe climbed some stairs in her home and eventually made it into her bedroom with her cell phone. Karen didn't know that Jennifer McCabe settled in at 2:27 in the morning on January 29, 2022, and typed a Google search that she would later delete. 2:27 in the morning was over 3 hours before John O'Keefe's body was found on Brian Albert's lawn. 2:27 was over 3 hours before anyone knew or suspected that John O'Keefe was missing or hurt or in trouble. And at 2:27 in the morning, you will learn that with no one watching her, thinking she was alone with her thoughts, not worrying that anyone would know what she was doing, Jennifer McCabe typed in the following Google search: how long to die in the cold? Now, she misspelled the first word, so the actual search was how long to die in the cold, but you'll get the point. You will ask yourself, why would somebody Google how long does it take for someone to die in the cold, unless that person knew someone who either was in that situation or would be in that situation? You will question during this trial, who was it who actually did die in the cold at some point that night, sometime after Jen McCabe was asking Google for an answer to her question? And you'll learn that the answer to that question was John O'Keefe. The medical examiner in this case will testify that one of the causes of John O'Keefe's death was hypothermia. John O'Keefe died in part because he was left to die in the cold. Now, the Commonwealth will try to dispute the timing of that Google search. They'll try to claim that there were only 2 Google searches at 6:23 and 6:24 a.m. after John's body was found. But one problem for the Commonwealth will be that we have retained Richard Green, one of the leading computer forensic experts in the country. Rick Green has forensically analyzed Jennifer McCabe's phone, both manually and using every appropriate type of computer software to solve this issue. Rick Green will confirm for you that Jennifer McCabe did indeed make that search at 2:27 a.m. And another problem for the Commonwealth is that you will hear and see other evidence that will confirm that Jennifer McCabe is lying when she denies making that Google search at 2:27 a.m. You will conclude that before she went to bed, if she went to bed that night, Jennifer McCabe wanted to know just how long it would take for someone to die in the cold. And a big question in this trial for you will be, when was John O'Keefe left to die in the cold? I expect the Commonwealth will try to persuade you that he was left there sometime around 12:30 a.m. because they're going to try to prove to you that Karen Reed hit him and that his body stayed there the entire night until first responders arrived at 6 a.m. and his body was taken to the hospital. But you will learn that there are big problems with the Commonwealth's theory of this case. You will learn that there were 6 people at that after-hours party at Brian Albert's house, all of whom left by the front door and would have been confronted by John O'Keefe's lifeless body on that lawn if he was actually there at that time. Those 6 people walked out the front door to 34 Fairview, walked to their cars, either in the driveway or parked in front of the house. Brian Albert's sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, was there. Her husband, Matthew McCabe, was there. ATF federal agent Brian Higgins was there, who was also Brian Albert's friend. Sarah Levinson, a friend of Brian Albert Jr., was there. Julie Nagel, another friend of Brian Albert Jr., was there. And Caitlin Albert, Brian Albert's daughter, was also there. All of them leaving the residence. Each of those people left 34 Fairview in Canton, where Brian Albert lived. Each of them walked out facing the front lawn, where the Commonwealth will tell you that a 6'2", nearly 220-pound big man in dark clothing was sprawled on the front lawn when there was only a dusting of white snow on the ground. He was supposedly sprawled on that lawn, just feet from where these people were walking when they left the residence. And you will learn that not one of these people saw John O'Keefe laying. Not one. And you know who else saw no one laying outside in the early morning hours of January 29th? The snowplow driver in charge of plowing the street for the city of Canton. And this is another big problem for the Commonwealth. You will learn that Michael Proctor, here's that name again, wrote a report where he claimed that the DPW supervisor had told him that Fairview Road had not been plowed that night. Proctor's total investigation on this issue consisted of one phone call and no follow-up. He just submitted his report that simply said the road hadn't been plowed that night, perhaps thinking that no one else would follow up either. But you'll learn that when it came to finding out the truth, it's not that Proctor couldn't find the truth, it's that he wouldn't. But fortunately, you'll learn that we would, and we did. You'll learn that within weeks after January 29th, we sent our investigator, a former Medford police officer named Paul Makowski, to the Canton DPW to try to get to the bottom of this. Paul Makowski talked to the same supervisor at the DPW, a man named Michael Trotta, whom Proctor claimed had told him that the street hadn't been plowed that night. You'll learn that Paul Makowski found out that Michael Proctor was not telling the truth. You'll learn that Michael Trotta from the DPW told Paul Makowski, our investigator, that the street was indeed plowed that night, and that the name of the plow driver was Brian Laughlin. So Paul Makowski tracked down Brian Laughlin. He asked Mr. Laughlin if the state police or any investigators had ever spoken to him. And the answer came back, no. You will then learn what Brian Laughlin had to say about what he saw and didn't see that night, and you will be shocked. Brian Laughlin told Paul Makowski that he was driving a big snowplow in Canton that night, You'll learn that the nickname for it at the DPW was Frankenstein, because it had a lot of spare parts and it had been around forever. Brian Lawford told Paul Mikowski that when he plows the streets of Canton in Frankenstein, he's very careful. He makes sure to check not only the roads in front of him, but also the yards to the side of his plow. He makes sure not to hit a fire hydrant or a tree or an animal, or heaven forbid, a person lying in the snow. He's always on the lookout. You'll learn that Brian Lawford passed by 34 Fairview in his plow, traveling right by Brian Albert's front lawn at 2:30 in the morning. You'll learn that Brian Lawford confirms that at about 2:30, when he went by that house, John O'Keefe was not on that front lawn. So you'll learn that about 2 hours after the Commonwealth claims that Karen Reed somehow incapacitated John O'Keefe, an eyewitness confirms that not only could it not have happened, but it didn't happen. But you'll learn that Brian Lawford also provides some other troubling testimony for the Commonwealth. You'll learn that after making that pass at 2:30 in the morning and seeing no body, he showed up again at the entrance to Fairview Road, intending to make another pass down it with his plow. This time, however, at about 3:30 in the morning, he looked down the street and he saw that parked right next to Brian Albert's front lawn, right in the very area where John O'Keefe's body was later found at 6 a.m., Brian Lawford saw a Ford Edge parked on the side of the road. You will learn that the police have done zero investigation to discover whose Ford Edge that was. You'll learn that members of the Albert family drove Ford Edges. You'll learn that the police to this day claim not to know who was parked right next to the area where John O'Keefe's body was later found. You will learn that while investigators on this case, including Mike Proctor, completely ignored the snowplow driver who went right by the Albert residence, the defense not only tracked him down and interviewed him, but the plow driver actually took our investigator on a ride back past the residence to explain the precise route that he had taken on January 29th. You'll learn that some other curious things were going on in the early morning hours of January 29th. Curious things that the police in this case utterly failed to investigate. For example, after people left the after-hours party at Brian Albert's house on January 29, Brian Albert claimed that he had no contact with anyone but his wife until he was woken up in the morning. But you will learn that he was ultimately confronted by the fact that his phone records revealed that he had actually placed a phone call to ATF agent Brian Higgins, his friend, the same friend who had been at his house earlier that night. And that was at 2:22 in the morning. You'll learn that Brian Higgins called him back 17 seconds later, and they connected for 22 seconds on their cell phones. You'll be asked to consider just how long 22 seconds is, and what could be said and discussed during that long of a phone call. You will consider that phone call in the context of the other curious things that were going on during the early morning hours of January 29th. You will learn about the following in chronological order. 2:12 a.m., Jennifer McCabe arrives at her home. 2:22 a.m., Brian Albert calls Brian Higgins. 2:22 a.m., 17 seconds later, Higgins calls him back, and Brian Albert and Brian Higgins are on the phone together for 22 seconds. 2:23 a.m., Jennifer McCabe climbs the stairs to her bedroom. 2:27 a.m., Jennifer McCabe searches on Google how long to die in the cold. 2:30 a.m., plow driver Brian Lawford confirms there was no body on Brian Albert's front lawn. 3:30 a.m., Brian Lawford confirms that a Ford Edge was parked right where John O'Keefe's body was later found. The Commonwealth will not be able to successfully dispute any of those facts, yet I expect that they will persist in asking you to convict Karen Reed anyway. You will learn that there are other major problems with the Commonwealth's theory. You'll learn that when John O'Keefe was found, he did not look like he had been hit by a car. You'll learn that he looked to have been attacked and beaten up. You'll learn that John O'Keefe was a large 6'2" man who, if positioned behind a Lexus SUV, would have had his torso completely exposed to the rear of that vehicle, including to the taillight. You'll learn that no part of his torso was injured. There was no bruising, no ridges, no scratches, no punctures. You'll learn that his chest and hips and legs were pristine, despite the Commonwealth's contention that he was hit by a 6,000-pound vehicle. The evidence will show that what was not pristine was his right arm. You will take one look at that arm, and you will conclude that a car did not cause those injuries. The injuries to John O'Keefe's arm appear to be consistent with scratch marks and claw marks, marks that make it look as though an animal had attacked his arm. But you won't have to rely just on your common sense when you look at those photos. You'll hear from an expert forensic pathologist who is world-renowned, who has personally conducted thousands of autopsies. And he will testify that those marks are consistent with scratch and claw marks and bite marks from an animal, including a German Shepherd. You'll learn that on January 29th of 2022, Brian Albert's family dog, Chloe, was a German Shepherd. You'll learn that Brian Albert has admitted that this dog is not good around strangers. You'll learn that on January 29th of 2022, John O'Keefe would have been a stranger to that dog. And you'll learn that Chloe had been the beloved family dog for the Alberts for 7 years. The Albert family loved Chloe. But strangely, as we discuss this dog today, the Albert family doesn't have its beloved Chloe anymore. You'll learn that Brian Albert was called to testify before the grand jury regarding this matter in April of 2022, and that he did testify about his German Shepherd, Chloe, during that grand jury testimony. And you'll learn that not long after that testimony, Brian Albert and his family rehomed their beloved family dog. They gave away their family dog, and Chloe, the German Shepherd, is therefore now gone. Now, the Commonwealth will try to take your attention away from all of these troubling facts and try to persuade you not to consider their shocking lack of investigation of anyone else, not to consider John O'Keefe's injuries, not to consider the fact that multiple people left the residence and saw no body, not to consider the fact that the snowplow driver was specifically looking at 2:30 a.m. and there was no body there, not to consider the fact that two people in the house were communicating at 2:22 a.m. but denied speaking to each other for 22 seconds, and not to consider the fact that one of their witnesses, who was also present at the home, was unusually curious at 2:27 a.m. about how long it would take for someone to die in the cold. The Commonwealth will instead try to persuade you that Karen Reed supposedly had a motive to kill John O'Keefe because they were not getting along. You'll hear about their trip to Aruba over New Year's Eve and that Karen was upset that John had been flirting with another woman. And you will hear that Karen considered exploring her options after that trip, which led her to a get-together at one point with ATF federal agent Brian Higgins, although that never went anywhere. But you'll also hear that in January of 2022, after the Aruba trip, and not long before January 28th and 29th, John O'Keefe was making long-term plans with Karen, including a family trip with her and the kids, and also another trip with Karen and another couple for months into the future. And you'll see video of how John and Karen were interacting on the night in question. You'll see for yourself how they looked at each other from the video at the waterfall that night. Nobody who saw them that night saw anything wrong. There was nothing wrong. I mean, like any couples, occasionally they would bicker or disagree. But you will hear zero evidence of any domestic violence in that home whatsoever. John never raised a hand in anger toward Karen, and Karen never raised a hand in anger toward John. That simply wasn't who they are. You will conclude the notion that Karen Reed chose the start of a snowstorm to suddenly become violent out of the blue for the first time and intentionally kill her boyfriend by hitting him with her car and leaving him there with a house full of people inside is patently ridiculous. You will also learn that what's not ridiculous is that someone, not Karen Reed, ambushed John O'Keefe. Somebody probably didn't mean to kill him, but somebody went too far. You'll learn that Trooper Proctor failed to investigate motives that other people had to harm John O'Keefe. You'll learn that Proctor failed to investigate anything or anyone who was in the Albert residence that night. You'll learn that he failed to investigate the antagonistic relationship between members of the Albert family and John O'Keefe. You'll learn that apparently nobody investigates the Albert family of Canton. Remember, on day one, Trooper Proctor was asked whether the homeowner, Brian Albert, would catch a lot of grief. And Trooper Proctor himself said, nope. Homeowner's a Boston cop too. So folks, the trial is now about to start, and the witnesses are about to start testifying. On behalf of Karen Reed, I ask that you do two things during this trial. First, I ask that you pay attention to all of the evidence. The way trials work, the prosecution gets to present its case first. They conduct their direct examinations first. So we respectfully ask that you wait for us. We will get to cross-examine their witnesses, and you will find that cross-examination is the key that unlocks the truth.
There you go. That's the total summary of the Karen Reed case there by the prosecution. And I've been watching this from day one right through to day 25. And so far, the prosecution has been spot on its evidence, the witnesses that has come forward. We have learnt that everything seems to be going the prosecution's way. Seems to be a lot of collusion with the police colleagues, families, and virtually everyone that was in that house. Bearing in mind there was about 13 people in that house on that night for the after party. Some of them left at early morning, as was pointed out by Mr. Yanati just now, and no one saw a body lying on the front steps. Also, as he said, there were just light snow fluffing around at that time in the morning. I think the heavy snow only came down probably around about 7 to 7:30 a.m. in the morning and throughout the day. But the early part, there was just very light snow. So, as I said, I've been watching it from day one right through to day 25. And so far, the prosecution seemed to be, rather than bring forward evidence of Karen Reed guilty of a hit and run and leaving her longtime boyfriend to die, they seem to be covering up or defending what their witnesses has said. So to me, as a basic citizen, I'm not sure which way the jury is looking on it, but all I can see is the prosecution is trying to make things look good from those witnesses that they've brought forward, because it seems to be all collusion. Once the defense lawyers comes in to do the cross, it brings out the truth from what I can see. As I said, I'm not a policeman, I'm not a law officer of the law, I'm just a basic citizen like many of you that's watching this video now, and what I can see from what has come out in these last 25 days is a lot of untruths, a lot of well, at least 2 or 3 people got rid of their phones, even though um, even though the prosecution was able to get the phone data, but phones has been thrown away or thrown into water or deleted or acquiring new phones and new telephone numbers. This has all happened, and this was from mainly from the people who was inside this particular house on the night, or people who's very close to each other, and I'm mainly talking about the police family. But we still have a long way to go. This case is going to be going on now for probably another 6 weeks or so. They said it hopefully should finish by the end of July 2024. As you know, there were a lot of pre-trials before this started back in April. So there was, as you know, there was a grand jury hearing. So lots of evidence came out on that. Up to date, we're hearing that you heard the name Proctor. He is actually being investigated for the handling of this particular case. He's still on duty, as far as I understand. He's still on duty, but he is being investigated by the FBI for the handling of this particular case. So that will come into it. He gave his evidence. Another officer, Brian Higgins, he also he actually got rid of his phone. He was off. He was. There seemed to be some sort of text exchanges between him and Karen Reed. Looks as though he was after Karen Reed, and I think Karen Reed was a bit fluctuated with him. She did text him back. She was the two of them had a long exchanges in love texts, let's put it that way, between, well, up to the 23rd of January 2022. I think that it was, yes, that's it, yeah, up to January 2022 they were having love exchanges. So this same fella, Brian Higgins, he was actually in the home on that particular night, fellow officer. It looks like Karen did, um, Karen was thinking about having it. It looks like she was thinking about having some sort of affair, unless she was trying to make her boyfriend jealous, because apparently you're going to hear some evidence about there was a trip to uh, forgot the country now, but there was a trip to a Caribbean island where John O'Keefe was flirting with one or two other women, and I think obviously, like most people, um, most women would kind of jealous, and I think Karen Reed got a bit jealous, so she was basically trying to get her own back on thing. But that doesn't prove what the prosecution is trying to say that she did. She said she's not guilty of what she's being accused of. As far as she knows, she did drop her boyfriend off at the front steps of 34 Fairview. She drove off, went home, realized he wasn't home at 5 in the morning, and she decided to go with a couple others and look for him. That's a nutshell. You've heard most of it from the defense lawyer. He gave you a full nutshell of what happened. And as I would back that up to say I've seen all 25 days of the testimony with up to 53 witnesses so far. I myself have seen no definite positive um, evidence that Karen Reid is guilty of these charges. None at all. There's a few snippets of situation with broken glass, broken rear glass of the brake lights and things like that, and videos that was shown by the prosecution, which seemed to be fixed. When I say fixed, there was an inverted video where they tried to show the jury and the viewers that the glass was broken, and the defense was able to show us that this was not correct. The video was fixed and it was highly edited. So there's lots. What I have got for you is some other clips leading up between day 1 up to day 25. I'll play those clips for you, and by all means try to make your own mind up, from what you've heard so far and what you're going to see now, and make some comments below. I'd love to hear your comments. If you've just joined us, thank you very much. My name is Hartley. I'm over here in London, basic citizen, as I would say, interested in all these high-profile crime cases and analyzing myself as a citizen, what went on, trying to come to a conclusion whether someone is guilty or not guilty. In this case, as I said, it looks like a not guilty to me, but I'm not the one that the court is going to be listening to. It's going to be the jury, all 12 of them. So let's get those clips together for you. And don't forget to smash that like button. Help us to grow across the YouTube network. We've been going for approximately 1 year and 4 weeks now, and we hope to continue forever. Let's put it that way. We also want to grow to at least 50,000 subscribers, more if you can help it, and you can definitely do that for us. Like, share, and of course, subscribe. Gonna get those clips for you now. Okay, on the screen now you've got this is Officer Sharif. He's one of the early investigators. He arrived at the crime scene, I should say. He arrived at the crime scene, and he was able to make a statement and pass that on to the main investigating officer of what happened on that particular morning. On the cross-examination, the defense lawyer was able to point out some inconsistencies here, or should I say, some untruthful situations. So listen out to it. Let me know which way you think on this one.
Take a look at that report that's dated March 15, but reflects an interview on January 30, and then tell me if you recognize it.
Looks like it's his report.
Okay. That's Trooper Proctor's report of an interview that he did with you, correct?
Yes.
And if you look on the second page, a paragraph about what you stated to Trooper Proctor.
That's highlighted?
I highlighted for you,
Yes.
Okay. Did you tell Trooper Proctor, let me withdraw that, ask it a different way. Were you trying to be as thorough and comprehensive with Trooper Proctor as you were in your own report?
Yes.
You weren't holding anything back in that interview, correct?
No.
You wanted to be as truthful and as honest as you possibly could?
Yep.
And as comprehensive as you possibly could, correct?
Yes.
You told Trooper Proctor that you could, quote, hear Karen Reid continually state, "Is he dead?" as the paramedics treated the victim. Officer Seraph then seen Karen inside her friend's vehicle, correct?
Correct.
So the only statement you attributed to my client the day after this incident was those 3 words, "Is he dead?" that you continually repeated. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Cook?
Trooper Proctor is the main investigation officer. He's the one who I mentioned earlier that is under investigation for his way in which he investigated this case. So he's being investigated for his conduct in this particular case. So it puts a lot of doubts in my mind and many others' mind of whether these officers has all got together to point the evidence in the direction of Karen Reid and make her guilty of this murder trial.
Yes.
In the 2 times that you were asked to reflect back on exactly what happened that morning, on January 29th and January 30th, both times you attributed only 3 words to my client having been repeated continually in her distraught state. Is he dead? Right?
Yes.
And she wasn't saying that calmly, I'm assuming.
No,
Matter of fact, you used the word she was severely distraught. Is that right?
that's correct.
When you say severely distraught, we saw part of that on your dash cam. She was emotional,
Yes.
upset,
Yes.
focused on John,
Yes.
trying to save his life,
Yes.
and asking, what was the question she asked?
Is he dead?
Over and over and over, correct?
Correct.
Then you were asked to testify in April of 2022, April 14th of 2022, at a state-run grand jury by the Commonwealth.
Yes.
In fact, Mr. Lally was the fine prosecutor who was asking you the questions, correct?
Yes.
Between the time you wrote your report on January 29th and you gave a statement officially on January 30th, between that time and when you testified in April of 2022, do you have any meetings with anybody from the Massachusetts State Police?
No.
Do you have any meetings with Mr. Lally?
No.
Did Mr. Lally put you on the stand without talking to you first?
No. For this trial?
Nope. I'm just, the dates in question are up to April 14th, 2022. At grand jury.
I don't recall.
You don't recall if you met with either Mr. Lally or any of his contemporaries to discuss your potential testimony?
Not. I don't recall meeting with him for that. No. One time I met with him in his office was a couple of weeks ago with this.
In preparation for this testimony.
Correct.
But your testimony now is that he didn't meet with you or you did not connect with him to discuss your testimony before the April grand jury?
I don't recall.
When you did testify in that grand jury, you changed your story, didn't you?
No.
You believe you testified completely consistently at that grand jury as you have in your report?
I testified for what I remember what happened, sir.
I see. Was your memory better in April than it was minutes or hours after the event?
Was it better?
Was it better or worse?
I don't know.
Do you think your memory gets better as time goes on?
Not usually, no.
No. Usually it's the opposite, isn't it?
Yes.
Memories get foggy and fade.
Yes.
Which is why you write reports the day of the incident, if you can, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember what you testified to at the grand jury in April of 2022?
The whole thing?
No, sorry, that's a bad question on my part. Just as it relates to statements attributed to my client.
Yes.
What was your exact testimony in April of 2022?
I'd have to look at my.
Would it refresh your recollection if you saw a copy of your
Sure.
grand jury transcript? May I approach?
Yes.
Page 18. Let me know once you You remember, would you review that and tell me if that refreshes your recollection?
Yes, it does.
In fact, on April 14th, 2022, months after this event, for the first time you said, quote, and these are your words, tell me if I get them right. She, this is my fault. I don't know. She said, I can't believe this happened. I mean, she kept asking if he was going to die, if he's dead. And, I just basically said, we're doing the best that we could, end quote.
That's correct.
May I approach?
Yes.
So in April of 2022, for the first time, you attributed the phrase, "This is my fault. I can't believe this happened," to my client, correct?
That's correct.
But nowhere in your official report did you say that, correct?
That's correct.
And nowhere in your interview with Trooper Proctor the next day did you say that.
That's correct.
You think that was a pretty important omission on your part?
It was an oversight.
An oversight.
Yes, sir.
That a woman whom you made contact with, standing over the body of a fallen police officer, said to you, "This is my fault." Just missed that one.
Yes, I didn't write it down.
And then, of course, you testified yesterday and your statement changed again, right?
I don't,
Remember what you said yesterday, these jurors?
word for word?
Well, I wrote it down. Let's see if this helps. It's all my fault. I did this, end quote.
Yes.
Remember that? That yes?
Yes, sir.
But you didn't say that at the grand jury.
No.
And you didn't say that to Trooper Proctor.
No, sir.
And you didn't put it in your report.
That's correct.
There you go. This is Officer Sharif. He was the one, as I said, he arrived very early on that morning after the incident, and weeks later, given evidence, he has changed. He has changed his evidence different from what it was at the beginning. This is after obviously speaking to the prosecution, and I think it seems as though they all decided, well, we're going to have to point this evidence to Karen Reid. And as you can see there, it's been pointed out that he's not telling the truth as it should be. And he also spoke to the prosecution lawyer. His name is Mr. Lally. And obviously Mr. Lally needs to get the witnesses to perform. I should say perform. He needs to get the witnesses to perform as he wish to make it look guilty for Karen Reid. So you can more or less say this particular witness is a bit some of his evidence is discredited because he actually was not fully telling the truth there. So as I said, it's down to you guys. Make your mind up. Listen to all the evidence. And so far, it's prosecution is not it being able to prove their case as yet with the witnesses that's come forward. And this police officer here, he's being a bit cagey. Got another one coming up for you.
If you were to testify in another 2 or 3 weeks, you think your statement would just keep evolving?
Objection.
This next witness is one of the first responders that arrived at the crime scene.
In a police report, during an interview that you had with Yuri Butnik, on February 8th, that my client said, I hit him, correct?
Correct.
You remember having that conversation with Sergeant Butner?
I don't recall the conversation, but I'm trusting that your records are accurate.
Is it true that during that conversation, you indicated to Sergeant Butnick that, quote, Katie spoke with Karen Reed. Katie is Katie who?
The glove.
Katie spoke with Karen Reed, collecting medical history for the victim. And was also told by Karen that the last time she saw the victim was at 1 a.m. that morning. That is when Anthony, who's Anthony?
Would have been myself.
That is when Anthony heard Karen say, I hit him, I hit him. Is that what you told Sergeant Butnick?
I don't recall.
Does it appear that this is the time, firefighter Finlani, that Katie McLaughlin is getting a medical history from my client, or attempting to?
I can't tell from the video.
You do know, however, that during this time, you're in an ambulance probably 30 or 40 feet away, with the doors closed.
I don't know.
But you certainly don't see yourself in that frame, do you?
Doesn't appear to be, no.
Good. If we're done with the videos, can we take it down,
Of
please?
course. Yes, I think we are finished. Thank you, Your Honor. You were the lead firefighter on that team that night, correct?
Lead paramedic.
Lead paramedic, thank you. You understood, obviously, the gravity of hearing a statement like, I hit him, some sort of an explanation about what may have happened to the victim, correct?
Correct.
That statement could potentially have direct relationship to, or a direct relational impact on how life-saving measures are done by the medical personnel that you turn the victim over to.
Correct.
You testified at the grand jury that you wanted, once you got to the hospital, you wanted to be as quote-unquote helpful as possible when you handed over the patient, correct?
Correct.
You said you actually stayed at Good Samaritan for an additional 10 to 20 minutes, which is your habit in cases like this, because you wanted to be quote-unquote an asset to the medical intervention team, correct?
Correct.
That team includes the doctors and nurses that were trying to provide life-saving services to this victim.
Correct.
But you never relayed to a single doctor or a single nurse a single word about a woman who said, I hit him, did you?
So documentation for us ends at transfer of patient care. As far as my memory, I do remember relaying that information to the doctors and nurses.
You do?
Yes.
Have you ever testified about that? Ever? Previous to this?
Never been asked about that.
Oh, nobody ever asked you, so you didn't tell anybody.
In the court setting? No.
Testified in front of a grand jury, didn't you?
Yes.
Shalali asked you a bunch of questions.
Yes.
During the course of that conversation, it was under oath. Did you ever disclose that you told the doctors and the nurses that you heard a woman say, I hit him?
I recall telling the doctors and nurses that there's a question of that the patient was hit by a vehicle or we don't know, is what I directly said to the doctors and nurses.
You directly told the doctors and nurses that there was a question about whether or not he was hit by a vehicle, right?
Yes.
Have you ever said that in any context, either to the police or in a grand jury before today?
I don't recall.
You were asked a bunch of questions yesterday, the day before yesterday, and this morning by Mr. Lally.
Yes.
Did you say it on your direct examination?
I wasn't asked that question.
So since Mr. Lally didn't ask you, you just left it out, that you told the doctors, the medical professionals, that in fact, you described that this patient was likely hit by a car.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You wrote a report as well, correct?
Yes.
We talked a little bit about that report. There's an area in the report for a narrative
Yes,
about your observations, your experiences with this patient, correct?
correct.
Your job as a lead paramedic is to be as detailed as possible, correct?
Correct.
You want to provide and impart the most detail you possibly can about an incident to assist in medical intervention, correct?
Correct.
Take a look at page 3 of 5 of your report.
Yes,
You see that narrative area?
I do.
Can you point to that portion of your report where you indicate that my client said the words, "I hit him"?
It doesn't say that.
Can you point to the report, the portion of your report where you indicate that you told the doctors and nurses that she said, "I hit him"?
Doesn't say that.
Can you point to that portion of your report where you indicate that your concern for the patient was that he had been hit by a car?
Doesn't say that.
Again, that was another witness there. One of the first responders that attended the crime scene seemed to have changed his testimony from how he gave it back in 2022. So as I said, there's lots of inconsistencies, and it seems as though once they speak to the prosecution lawyer, Mr. Lally, they all seem to come back with different stories. They all seem to be trying to point the evidence towards Karen Reed, making her look guilty, and that continued right up to day 25. Here's another example of what I'm saying. If you've just joined us, welcome along to Crime Vlog Weekly. My name is Hartley. We're just doing a recap on the Karen Reed trial from day 1 right up to day 25, so you can get a full rounded look and feel of where this case has gone from and where it is and where it's at now. And at the end of it, see if you can make it your mind who's in the lead on the decision to come.
I would say she's an acquaintance. She's not a close friend.
She had a group of friends of yours?
We have mutual friends.
How long have you known her?
Probably since high school.
When you say, and I don't want to ask your age, I wouldn't do that. How many years, how long of a span of years have you known her?
Since high school, so maybe 10.
And you know her family, generally?
I don't.
You don't know anything about her family?
I don't know her family.
Had you ever been to her house?
Not that I recall ever being there.
Not that you recall, or you haven't? Those two different things.
I don't recall ever being there.
Okay, so you might have been there, you just don't recall.
I don't recall ever being there.
Okay.
This is one of the first responders also who attended the crime scene on the morning of the incident with John O'Keefe, who died on the doorstep of Brian Albert. This witness, as I said, she is a first responder, and her claims was that she's not friendly with the, I should say, the police family, let's put it that way. And it looked as though she was also concluding with others not to tell the truth. But as I said, make your mind up, listen to all the evidence that's coming out, make your mind up of what do you think is going on. Is it collusion? Is that a made up stories? What is it? Let me know.
If I were to ask you if you've ever been to her house, yes or no, you cannot answer that because you don't know. You cannot recall, correct?
I would say, I would lean towards no. I have no recollection of ever being at her house.
Are you friends with her on social media?
Yes.
May I approach her on it?
Yes.
I'm just going to leave all 4 of these up. I don't know what they look like. Can you do me a favor and take a look at the first document? What does that document appear to be?
It says Caitlin's friends.
What does it look like? That's a printout of.
I'm sorry?
What does that look like? It's a printout of. Does that look like it's from Facebook or one of the social media apps?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. Some social media.
Okay. Under Caitlin's friends, do you see your handle, for lack of a better phrase?
I do.
Okay. Is that you?
Yes.
Can you look at the next photograph? Before we talk about that next photograph, which is, I should go in order for the record, Your Honor, because the first one was H. Before we talk about I, which is the next photograph, how long have you been social media friends, quote, friends with Caitlin Albert?
I don't know.
More than 5 years?
Probably.
More than 8 years?
I don't know.
The second photograph, or the second document appears to be a photograph. It's I, is that right?
Yes,
Do you see yourself in that photograph?
I do.
You see Caitlin in that photograph?
I do.
When was that photograph taken?
I have no idea.
Where was that photograph taken?
I don't know.
You have no idea how long ago that was?
I don't.
What was the event that was depicted, that is depicted in that photograph?
I don't know.
Is that local, or was that on a trip somewhere?
I don't know. Probably local. If it's a beach, I don't remember. I've never been away to a beach on vacation with all of these people, so probably local.
When we say local, let's talk about local. I don't mean, we may have different definitions. Where would that be? What beach? I'm not as familiar with the location.
I'm not sure.
Maybe on the Cape?
Possibly.
Do you recognize some of the other folks in that photograph?
I do.
Matter of fact, there's a lot of people in that photograph, right?
There's a lot of people in it.
Did you take a trip with all those people at some point in the past?
Take a trip.
To the beach?
Did I go to the beach at some point with these people? Yes.
Okay. When did you go to the beach with all those folks?
I don't know. I don't know when this picture is from.
Have you
It
gone?
seems old to me, but
Well, you can see yourself. I mean,
yeah.
What was that? Did you say it seems old to you?
Yeah, to me.
Okay.
This isn't like a recent to me.
how old do you think that photograph is?
I don't know. It could be around high school. I'm not sure.
And I know Mr. Jackson didn't want to ask you how old you are. When did you get out of high school?
2014. I
Okay.
graduated.
So could that have been around 2014?
It could be.
So you've known Caitlin for at least that long?
Yeah.
And when I say travel, I mean travel outside of Canton, gone places with her, correct?
Yes.
Posed for photographs with her,
Yes.
with other folks.
Yes.
It's like socializing and partying, correct?
She's definitely trying to distance herself from knowing the Caitlin, which is all connected to the police family. This first responder who attended on the day definitely don't want to let it all out, so she's definitely got something to hide. Don't worry. Mr. Jackson, Alan Jackson, the defense lawyer, is definitely going to get it out of her.
Looks like socializing.
Maybe a small vacation.
I've never been on vacation with a big group of people like this.
Well, that doesn't look like what would you call that if that's not like a mini vacation?
A day at the beach?
A day at the beach, okay. So maybe a day vacation.
Sure.
Okay. Let's look at the next photograph. Jay. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I do need to remind myself. Okay. That photograph looks a little older, correct?
They both look old to me. I don't know when they're from.
I'm going to ask you the same questions about that. These aren't trick questions. I don't want to waste your time. What's that from?
I don't remember specifically what or where this is.
Do you see yourself in that photograph?
I do.
You see Caitlin in the photograph?
I do.
You're all posing for the camera, correct?
Yes.
What's the location?
I don't know.
No idea.
I don't.
This is yet another socializing event with Caitlin that you can't recall.
I don't know where this is
Is that-
exactly.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on your words. Go ahead.
I don't know where this is exactly.
So you've had so many socializing events with Caitlin and other folks that you can't pinpoint this one as opposed to any of the others that you've had.
No, I'm saying I can't. These photos are old. I don't know. I don't remember where these were or the circumstances around them. That's what I'm saying.
You see how you're dressed in that photo?
Yes.
You see how you see the other friends that are there with you?
Yeah.
How many people would you estimate are in that photo?
Do you want me to count how many people?
Give me it. I don't have the photo in front of me, so just give me it. Is it more than 5?
12
12 people?
ish.
Do you recognize those dozen people?
I do.
Did you go on a day trip with those dozen people?
Yeah, possibly.
When?
I don't know.
Where?
I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't remember.
How many times have you gone on day trips with those dozen people?
I don't know.
How about turning back to photograph I? How many times have you gone on day trips and socialized with those number of people? So it's like probably double that, 20 or 25 people.
I don't know.
That's a big group of friends of yours that includes Caitlin Albert, right?
A big group of mutual friends.
So it's not just that she's a mutual friend, she's a friend. Is that right?
As I said before, I would consider myself more of an acquaintance. We have mutual friends. I wouldn't consider her a close friend, but yeah, I mean that would be my answer.
You basically grew up with her, went to high school with her.
I didn't grow up with her. I went to high school with her.
When I say grow up with her, I mean you grew up in the same town as her, right?
Grew up in the same town.
Went to the same high school as she did.
Yes.
Socialized with the same friends as she did.
Yes.
Went on day trips with her.
Yes.
And apparently have all the same friend group. Right?
I don't know that we have all the same friend group. These are people that we're both friends with.
But you don't consider her anything more than just an acquaintance.
I think I described it to you.
The answer to my question is you don't consider her to be anything more than an acquaintance.
I wouldn't consider her to be a close friend.
Now let's take a look at the last photograph. Describe what's in that photograph.
It's a picture of me. Caitlin is in it, and seems to be other people in it as well.
May I approach?
Yes.
Both of you can take it. Sorry, I didn't want to drop it on you. That's a close-up photograph of who?
Caitlin, and I'm also in it.
And you're doing what in the photograph as it relates to Caitlin?
It seems like I'm kind of kneeling down next to her.
Touching her?
Can I see that for just a minute, please? Thank you. I'm sorry, can you show me you? Okay, thank you.
So just for the record, may I approach one more time now?
Yes.
Thank you. Take a look at that one more time. You're sort of just behind Caitlin in that photograph?
Yes.
Caitlin's the one drinking the beer?
Yes.
You got your right arm around her?
Yes.
You both appear to be wearing swimwear,
Yes.
bathing suits.
Yes.
And you're giving some sort of sign with your left hand?
No, I'm not.
Is it somebody else's hand that I saw? Maybe that's Caitlin's.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't have the photograph in front of me. I don't have it committed to memory. Looks like that's a photograph that you and Caitlin posed for together, correct?
It seems like it's a close-up of a bigger, like a picture. It seems to be zoomed in on a group of people.
Which was posted on social media,
Okay.
is that right?
Are you telling me that?
I'm asking you that. You ever seen that posted on social media?
I don't recall seeing this picture, but if it was on social media, then okay.
How long ago was that picture taken?
I don't know.
Who took the picture?
I don't know.
Where were you when the photograph was taken?
Probably at a beach if we're wearing bathing suits.
Probably at a beach or at a beach?
Well, I can't see a beach in the picture. We're in bathing suits. It could be at a beach.
Right, do you recognize the bathing suits that you're wearing in the photograph?
No.
You literally don't even recognize your own outfit?
No.
So that doesn't help define where you were and when that photograph was taken?
No, sir.
Do any of these photographs remind you that you've been to Caitlin's house at some point in your friendship with her?
No.
Has Caitlin ever been to your house?
Not to my recollection.
When was the last time you talked to Caitlin?
I don't remember exactly. It's probably been a few years.
When was the last time you went to an event, socializing event with Caitlin?
Again, I don't remember exactly.
Conveniently, she doesn't remember quite a lot, yet still she is able to give evidence of that early morning, and she's given evidence to the police officers that Karen Reed said certain things. She's definitely trying to distance herself from the police family, but as I said, it goes on for quite a while. But Alan Jackson definitely was able to prove that she's trying to hide the connection with her and Caitlin.
Did you talk to Caitlin at any point at or on or around January 29th, 2022?
No.
When was the last time you had talked to Caitlin before January 29th, 2022?
I don't know.
Was it a day before, a week before, a month before?
No, I don't talk to her. Like I said, we're not like close friends, so it's like pretty infrequent that we would interact.
Okay, here's another witness that hasn't been truthful also. He's also seen to be dodging the correct answers or questions, as I should say. It's been dodging all the way.
Place it in evidence, yes.
At what point did you lose sight of?
Thank you. Going back in session, maybe Susan.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. You had started to tell us who at the scene, who handled those solo calls. Can you describe that for us, please?
I handled them to the scene.
Steps after he was out of your view.
I know that
Steps after he was out of your.
Jen McCabe.
Where was everybody else in the house? Arrived and was situated in the Sally Port. Sally Port, along with the SUV, correct?
That is correct.
Sally Port. Canton PD, correct?
That is correct.
You might see him most days out of the week.
No, but
Did you arrive back at 34 Fairview to engage these interviews?
approximately 9 o'clock. Where
You just remember that name, physical building.
the best way. That's correct.
And at that point, you don't have any personal information about what happened to those solo cuts. Personal observations.
Until I removed them from temporary evidence.
You had a door that serves.
I don't know if I specifically did it at that point, but I certainly would, yes.
You knew that the vehicle had been in that Sally Port since January 29th in the afternoon, correct?
I don't believe what point I knew it was in the Sally Port, but I did know it was there for days before, yes.
Okay. And if it had been there from January 29th to February 1st, that's 3 full days.
That's correct.
Sally Port, along with the SUV, correct?
That is correct.
Did you photograph or cause to be photographed that SUV immediately upon its arrival into the Sally Port on January? Sally Port, along with the.
There for days before, yes.
Okay. And if it had been there from January 29th to February 1st, that's 3 full days.
That's correct. That appearance of conflict of interest, so we have to be careful. I didn't believe there was a conflict. I honestly believe we could have investigated this case,
Well,
but it wasn't the appearance of such a conflict.
You also didn't believe that there was probable cause to search the house either.
I know that.
That answer will stand. It's stricken and so's the question.
So Canton Police Department was in fact, at your authority, given permission to manipulate that light in terms of pulling it out of the SUV, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Canton facilitate the removal of that light.
Yes,
And during the course of the removal of that light taillight was broken, correct?
that's correct.
And shattered.
Yes.
Parts of it that were falling onto the ground.
I don't think there was anything falling on the ground at that point.
So it definitely looks like it's only when the vehicle arrived in the Sally Port that all these shattered 46 pieces arrived and shattered on the ground. But as I said, no photos was taken, no video was taken of the car arriving, showing there was a shattered tail light. But lots and lots of stories from all these different officers. What's going on? What is going on?
And more once it was inside the Sally Port in Canton PD's custody.
You're gonna have to rephrase that. I don't understand the broken more part.
During the removal process, that light was broken even more.
No.
May I approach you?
Yes.
Just take a look at that photograph and tell me if you recognize it.
I don't recognize the photograph, first time I've seen it.
Do you recognize what's depicted in the photograph?
It's a broken taillight.
Does that appear to be the taillight that was removed during the process that we saw in the video just a few minutes ago under direct examination?
I can only assume it is, I never examined the light.
So you can't assume. So can you answer the question, Lieutenant?
No,
You don't recognize it?
No.
Okay, and were you, I didn't see you on the video, but it was a very dark video. Were you there?
yes, I'm in the gray shirt.
Okay, were you there as Officer Wanless was actually removing the taillight from the vehicle?
Not sure. I'd have to watch the video again.
Okay, do you recall if pieces and parts were being broken off and shattered while he was removing it?
Not at all.
May I approach?
Yes.
Collusion, collusion, collusion. The next clip we've got is this is Brian Albert. He's the homeowner. As you can see behind me, he owns this home. In actual fact, he sold the home after the grand jury hearing, and also the dog. He had the dog that was also sold, and I think they've been the defense has been trying to find out where this dog is, because as you've heard earlier, John O'Keefe had a lot of scratches on him. They wanted to get DNA to test the dog scratches on John O'Keefe.
It's not like you ignored her that evening.
No, I think that just the positioning of me on the other side of the table, I didn't have really much contact.
There was only one person between you, and that was Mr. Hicks.
No, I don't think that was the setup for the whole night.
I didn't say the whole thing.
Right.
I'm talking about right then.
Right,
That was an example.
right, what's your question? Rephrase your question, please.
Did you or did you not have conversations with Karen Reed that night?
I do not recall having conversations with Karen Reed that night at all, no.
And that's what you told the grand jury under oath, notwithstanding this video evidence to the contrary.
Yes, I don't think that video shows that.
I'm going to let that stand. Next question, please.
You were interviewed by Michael Proctor on January 29th, the day after this incident, correct?
Yes,
And that was 6 days after you spent several hours, Karen Reed, at this event, correct? 6 days later.
yes,
You were asked by Michael Proctor whether or not you knew or what your relationship was with Karen Reed, correct?
I don't recall if he asked me that.
Did you say to Michael Proctor, quote, that you quote, did not know Karen Reed, end quote?
I may have, yes.
But when you made that statement, you did not know that Ms. Reed had a photograph of you at the Hillside Bar, correct? You didn't know that photo existed, did you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Sir, you were trying to distance yourself from Ms. Reed in your interview with Michael Proctor, weren't you?
Objection.
Were you?
No, I was not.
Mr. Al-
Apparently, this officer he's trying to, as I said again, he's the police officer. He's Brian Albert, who owns the home. That home you can see just behind me. He was claiming he didn't know Karen Reed, yet still Karen Reed was able to produce a photo of them all together on a couple of occasions. So again, there seemed to be some lying going on, some collusion, all with these officers. The thing is, it's going to be in the jury's mind. Why is there seem to be all this covering up with these officers? What is it? Why are they trying to cover up? What is it all about? They're definitely causing confusion or doubts.
Albert, you were trying to distance yourself from knowing Ms. Reed in your grand jury testimony with, well, I'll use the date, in your April 2022 grand jury testimony, weren't you?
No.
You were further trying to distance yourself from Ms. Reed in your June 2023 grand jury testimony as well, correct?
No.
You thought that it was important to try to deny knowing John O'Keefe and Karen Reed during those interviews and or that testimony.
Objection.
Sustained.
Mr. Elmer, you knew that if you admitted having a relationship with John O'Keefe and Karen Reed, you'd have a lot to answer for when Karen Reed's boyfriend ended up dead on your lawn 6 days later, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. You can ask the question differently.
You knew that there would be questions about your relationship with Karen Reed if it would know that you knew her before her boyfriend ended up dead on your lawn 6 days later, correct? There would be questions.
Objection.
Can ask it a different way. That's sustained.
So you lied under oath when you said, I've never met or seen her before, correct?
No, because that wasn't my whole statement.
The sentence, I've never met or seen her before, pretty unequivocal, isn't it?
That was not the context of my whole sentence.
But that's the words that came, those are the words that came out of your mouth, right?
Initially, and then I remembered that I had met her once.
Let me just ask it this way.
Sure.
Is that sentence true or false? That you had never met or seen her before? True or false?
That portion of that sentence is false.
Did John O'Keefe come into your house at 34 Fairview at any time on January 29th, 2022?
Absolutely not. I wished he had.
And you're as sure about that as you are about the statement that you had never met or seen Karen Reed in your life,
Objection.
correct?
Sustained.
Yeah, I think what the defense lawyer is trying to prove that this officer is definitely telling lies. He's hasn't told the truth on 2 or 3 or 4 occasions, so it's going to be very doubtful for the jury to listen to whatever he has to say now. Obviously, again, collusion, untruths, many untruths. This is Brian Higgins. He's one of the most important witnesses on this particular case. He was there at the after party on that night when John O'Keefe's body was discovered. And I'm afraid that most of his evidence he gave seems to be lots of untruths. Just going to give you a little, just a little touch of it, help you to make your mind up, to point you in the right direction of which way this case is going.
Mr. Higgins, if you went back to Canton PD at 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning, you would certainly be in a position to monitor anything that was happening at Canton PD at the time that at least you were there, correct?
No.
I mean, you would be inside the building, correct?
Yes.
With access to dispatch and anything else that was happening around that floor, that area, correct?
I did not go into dispatch.
You would have access to the interior of the police station at that time if you went back to Canton PD at 1:30 in the morning, correct?
I'd have access.
You could see if there was any activity going on, any calls, call-outs, things of that nature.
I didn't have access to that. I wasn't looking for it.
Not that you were looking for it, Mr. Higgins. My question is more simple than that. If you were there, you'd know what was going on inside the building.
No.
So if you walked in, you would just be completely oblivious to anything that was happening. For instance, if troopers started amassing to go out to a call, you wouldn't see that.
Objection.
The objection sustained. Ask it differently.
You were able to monitor, you'd be in a position to monitor what was happening at the station around 1:30 in the morning when you were over there, correct?
No.
So, how long did it take you to get home from Canton PD?
A little longer from after I moved the vehicles.
Correct.
I don't know. I mean, it could have been 15 minutes. It could have been 20 minutes.
You live alone?
I do.
You did then?
Yes.
What did you do when you got home?
I think I had something to eat, maybe a couple more drinks.
Then you went to bed?
Was either on the couch or in the bed watching the news.
In any of the prior testimony that you've given in this case, have you ever indicated, ever, that you slept on the couch that night?
I don't know.
Well, you reviewed your testimony before you
Well,
testified.
those would be the two options.
Okay. I didn't ask you about your options. I asked you if you reviewed your testimony before you testified today.
Yes.
Okay. When you reviewed your testimony previous to coming in here today, did you ever testify that you slept on the couch that night?
No, I slept in my bed, but I could have started somewhere else.
Did you ever testify in the previous hearing that you started somewhere else?
Not that I know.
Did you ever mention a couch in any of your description about what you did when you went home that night?
Not that I recall.
As a matter of fact, what you did mention under questioning in a different hearing was that you may have gotten something to eat, you then went to bed, put your stuff on the nightstand next to your bed, correct?
That would be the routine, yes.
You did not make or receive any calls after returning home that night.
No.
You were clear when you went to sleep in your prior testimony that you put both your work and your personal phone, you had two at the time, correct?
Yes.
A personal and a work cell phone, right?
Yes.
You put them both on your bedside table because that's what you do every night, is that right?
Most often, yes.
As a matter of fact, you were asked whether or not you have a charging station, and you said, yeah, it's right on my bedside.
I don't know that I don't have a charging station.
Right, you said no, bedside. In other words, you keep your phone by your bedside, on your bedside table.
Usually.
You also testified that you did not use your phone that night to go on social media, correct?
That's correct.
You indicated that you don't go on, you didn't go on social media because you don't have social media. You don't use it that much.
I don't.
You said, I don't have the gram. I'm guessing that means Instagram, correct?
That is correct.
And you don't use Snapchat, and you quote, don't do those things, correct?
That's correct.
All right, so you testified that the first call you received after returning home on the 29th was a call from Chief Berkowitz just before 7 a.m., which woke you up. Is that right?
It was around 6:30-ish, I think.
Okay. Your testimony previously was at some point before 7 a.m., that call was the one that woke you up.
Yes.
And it turns out, Mr. Higgins, that was a lie, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't a lie.
When you were asked that question at a previous hearing, you didn't know that the person questioning you had your phone records, did you?
I assume they did.
And you were thereafter confronted with those phone records, correct?
I was asked about them, yes.
And those phone records established that you and Brian Albert actually exchanged not one, but two phone calls at 2:22 a.m. that morning, at a time when you claimed you were in bed asleep, correct?
I have no recollection of any phone calls.
May I approach you on?
Yes.
Please. May I approach you?
Yes.
Thank you. Take a look at those two documents and tell me if you recognize at least the top one.
Do they have a page number for me to follow or no?
I was just asking Ms. Little, I don't think we've introduced them, and no, they don't have a page number, but I'm gonna ask that they be marked for identification at least at this point.
It's going to be very difficult for this police officer to get out of this because phone calls, according to the data, was made sometime between 2:20 a.m. and 2:40 a.m. between him and another one of the officers, or shall I say, which is the homeowner, Brian Albert. Phone calls was made between them, and both of them stated that they didn't make phone calls. Yet still, there was 2 or 3 phone calls between them, up to 22 seconds. One of them was, and they're gonna have to try to find a way out of this. And what they claim is that while they were sleeping, somehow the phone rang. while they twist and turn. Now you're talking about an iPhone that you need either a password or facial recognition to come on. So the cross-questioning by Alan Jackson brought all this to the jury's attention.
Do you recognize those?
Yes.
May I approach?
Yes.
These are, you know what, I'm gonna, if it's okay with the court, maybe witness maintain those documents?
Sure.
I'd like to have those two documents marked only for identification with the court's permission.
Okay. As one exhibit?
We can do it as one exhibit, that's fine.
Okay. Could you please hand those to Madam Clerk?
Yes. Your Honor.
Mr. Higgins, you see the document on the lower right. It has a page number, or there's a numeric indicator 01770. In other words, 1770
On the lower right-hand corner?
in the right. I mean, in the red.
It says 01771.
Look at the next page. I think they're just out of order. You've seen that document before, correct?
I think I've seen it maybe on a screen, not in my hand.
That was these were the records that were shown to you at a prior hearing.
Yes.
And you acknowledge that at least the one marked QQ is a record of your calls, correct?
It has my name, my telephone number, correct?
And it indicates that on January 29th, 2022, at 2:22 and 35 seconds, you received a call from Brian Albert, duration of 1 second, correct?
Yes.
In other words, Brian Albert called you at 2:22 and 35 seconds, but it looks like you missed the call, correct?
I see the 1 second call, yes.
There's a second call just below that. On the same date at 2:22 and 52 seconds from you to Brian Albert. Do you see that one?
Yes.
And the duration of that call is 22 seconds, correct?
I see that, yes.
So 17 seconds after you missed a call, according to these records, from Brian Albert, you called him back, and there was a call lasting 22 seconds. Is that right?
That's what the records say.
May I approach?
Yes.
So the fact is, you were speaking to Brian Albert in the middle of the night, approximately 3 hours before Mr. O'Keefe's body was found in his yard, correct?
No, that's not correct.
And that was 5 minutes before 2:27 a.m. when there was a Google search for how long to die in cold, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
And then, of course, you lied about that under oath in that prior proceeding by saying, I don't remember this phone call.
From my point of view, there's just so much evidence that there seems to be lots and lots of collusion from all these police officers. Just listen out.
All the powers that be want answers ASAP. That's what you texted on January 29th, right?
Yes.
That put a lot of pressure on you, didn't it, Trooper Proctor?
There's a lot of pressure in every case, sir.
This case involves a Boston cop whose family you were actually connected to, correct?
Loosely.
Chris Albert, loosely.
Yes.
Julie Albert, loosely.
Yes.
Colin Albert, loosely.
Yes.
Kevin Albert, loosely.
Yes.
Loose enough to leave his badge and his gun in your cruiser after a night of drinking, right?
Objection.
Sustained.
You agreed in your group chat that you needed to, quote, make this cut and dry because another cop was involved. Those are your words, right?
Objection.
Where is this?
This was referred to in earlier text messages, group chats.
So is that right? Did you say that, sir?
I did text that. I don't know if it's in the exact context. But yes, those were my words.
Group chat.
Yes, that was in the group chat.
Your friends wrote this whole thing in their words, stinks, correct?
Yes, I interpret that as a joke.
You believed, Trooper Proctor, that your life would be much easier if Karen Reed was just dead, didn't you?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No. Like I said, it was a figure of speech. My emotions got the best of me based on, the fact that Miss Reed hit Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle and left him to die on the side of the road. So my emotions got the best of me with that figure of speech.
Well, let's talk about your figures of speech. During the course of your investigation, your figures of speech include the following. She's a bitch.
Objection.
Is that right?
Yes,
A whack job, correct?
yes,
A retard, right?
yes,
Her balloon knot leaks, right?
yes,
No ass, correct?
yes,
She's fucked, according to you, right?
yes,
Ass leaker. That was the word you used, a figure of speech, right?
correct,
A girl who shits herself, right?
correct,
And then fuck her, correct?
correct.
Would you agree, Trooper Proctor, that you have dehumanized Karen Reed during the course of your investigation with comments and words like this?
Objection.
Absolutely disgusting by this officer. I think you guys has had enough to be able to see that this was a complete collusion with these police officers, and there's no way they can find Karen Reed guilty of what they're accusing her of. Anyway, that's it from me, Hartley, from Crime Vlog Weekly. Until we meet again on another video, look after yourself. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe so we can keep you updated of everything that's happening here with the Karen Reed Show.